Socket spanners are a good choice where the top of the fastener is reasonably accessible. The socket fits onto it snugly and grips it on all 6 corners. That's the grip needed on any nut or bolt that's extremely tight. Sockets also come in deep wall sizes. These are ideal for removing or tightening spark plugs or nuts screwed onto long protruding threads. This socket has 6 flats instead of the common 12-point design. It's specially made for impact wrenches that exert a lot more pressure than turning sockets by hand. Socket spanners always need an attachment to turn them. This is done by a range of accessories, many of which are included in socket tool sets. The connection between the socket and accessory is made by a square drive. The larger the drive, the heavier and bulkier the socket. The 1/4-inch drive is for small work in difficult areas. The 3/8 drive handles a lot of general work where torque requirements are not too high. The 1/2-inch drive is for all-round service. The 3/4-inch drive is for large work with high torque settings. These are extensions. Many fasteners are located in positions where access can be difficult. Many lengths of extensions are available to bring the drive point out to where a handle can be attached. A universal joint can be used with an extension and takes the turning force that's to be applied through an angle. A speed brace is the fastest way to spin a nut on or off a thread by hand, but it can't apply much torque to the nut, so it's mainly used to remove a nut that's already been loosened, or to run the nut onto the thread until it begins to tighten. The most common socket handle, the ratchet, makes easy work of tightening or loosening a nut where not a lot of pressure is involved. It can be set to turn in either direction, and it doesn't need much room to swing it. It's built to be convenient, not super strong, so too much pressure could damage it. For heavier tightening or loosening, an adjustable offset handle or breaker bar gives the most leverage. It does need plenty of room, however. When that's not available, a sliding T-handle may be more useful. Both hands can be used, and the position of the T-piece is adjustable to clear any obstructions to turning it. There are many types of spanners. Choosing the one to use usually depends on just 2 things. How tight is the fastener? In other words, how much force is going to be applied to it? And how accessible is it? How much room is there to get the spanner onto the fastener and then turn it? It's always possible a spanner will slip. Anticipate what will happen if it does before putting a lot of tension onto the spanner, and pull a spanner towards you rather than pushing it away. Ring spanners grip a fastener at the corners just like a socket spanner, the sort of grip needed if a nut or bolt is very tight. Ring spanners have different sized heads at each end. It isn't as convenient as a socket, but it'll go places a socket can't, and still let plenty of force be applied. One disadvantage of the ring spanner is that it can be slow and awkward to use once the nut or bolt's been loosened. Open-end spanners slip easily and quickly onto fasteners, and that's particularly important for nuts and bolts in awkward places. The angle on the head allows it to be used in 2 different positions. While an open-end spanner often gives the best access to a fastener, if it's extremely tight, the open end shouldn't be used. This spanner only grips across two flats. If the jaws flex slightly or the flats don't fit tightly between them, the spanner can suddenly slip when force is applied. Use a ring spanner to break such a bolt or nut free, then the open end. The open end spanner should only be used on fasteners that are no more than firmly tightened. The combination spanner is a good tool in a tight spot. It has a ring on one end for gripping and breaking the fastener's hold, and an open-ended spanner of the same size on the other end. This is a more convenient way of turning a loosened fastener in a confined space. A variation on the open-end head is the flare nut spanner. It gives a better grip because the flats meet on 5 sides, not 2. The open 6th side lets the spanner be used on nuts and fittings associated with pipes and tubing. But again, don't use the flare nut spanner on extremely tight fasteners. The jaws may spread, damaging the nut. A spanner will only do a job properly if it's the right size for the nut or the bolt to be turned. The size used to describe a spanner is the distance across the flats of the nut or bolt to be turned. It can be metric in millimeters or imperial in inches. 2 systems with a range of spanners especially made for each one. The systems can be identified on the spanner by either a number for metric spanners or a fraction followed by AF. Another system once widely used in the United Kingdom was the Whitworth system. It used fractions, but they did not refer to the distance across the flats of the fastener. Some older British and Australian machines use Whitworth size fasteners. Some Whitworth sizes are not interchangeable with metric or imperial systems. There are a few spanners from one system that are the same size as those in another. But as a general rule, spanners from one system should not be used to work on nuts and bolts from the other. These are adjustable open-end spanners, usually referred to as shifting spanners or simply shifters. The lower jaw can be moved to fit any fastener size within the spanner range. Shifting spanners should only be used if the correct sized spanner is not available. Both the fastener and spanner could be damaged if they are used on really tight bolts or nuts.